or on Twitter. Now, Chris Williamson is the Labour MP for Derby North. He is a redoubtable campaigner. You may recall a week or two ago I interviewed him about his socialist roadshow that's burning up the rubber around the country and drawing big audiences. He's a former Labour frontbencher. Many people think he'd be a better deputy leader than Tom Watson, but who am I to say? Let me welcome him back. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thanks, George.
May I take your view first, as I took from Glyn Secker, on the breaking news that the disciplinary action against Dame Margaret Hodge has been dropped?
Well, I'm surprised, to say the least, and I know that a lot of ordinary rank-and-file members are very disappointed. Indeed, many are incredibly angry about it. And I think as a political movement, it's important that we have certain standards and rules, and that those rules apply to all of us, irrespective of who we are. Now, there may be some rationale behind why that decision was taken. I'm not party to it. But on the face of it, it does look a rather curious decision, I've got to say.
Now, Jeremy Corbyn is up against a wall. No one would doubt that. This anti-Semitism row isn't going away. It's existential, really, to borrow a phrase. The leader of the campaign against anti-Semitism, in a way, gave it away on Sky News over the last 48 hours when he said the only thing that Jeremy Corbyn could do to solve this problem is to withdraw from public life. Is that going to work, do you think? Is he going to withdraw from public life? And if not, how is he going to correct this situation?
Well, no, he's not going to withdraw from public life, and that has always been their target. It's been clear, I think, from the outset that their ultimate aim was to topple Jeremy Corbyn. I think they've been trying to take out his Praetorian Guard one by one, and ultimately their aim is to remove Jeremy, and they're not going to succeed that. We do have a mass movement within the Labour Party now who are determined, I think, to deliver a common-sense socialist programme. People have been inspired by the message that Jeremy Corbyn put forward. He was such a breath of fresh air when he managed to, by his fingernails, just clamber onto the ballot paper in 2015 after the general election, and as we know, was elected with an overwhelming mandate and then subsequently re-elected with an even bigger one after the coup. I think we're seeing a lot of attacks right now because the democracy review, which has been taking place, will be making recommendations to the Labour Party conference this year, which will change the way we elect our leader, that will make it easier and more democratic and ensure that there is a range of opinion reflected on the ballot paper for the leadership. It will also make a fundamental shift, I believe, in the way in which we make policy and empower ordinary grassroots members, utilise the opportunity for digital democracy to take place, and various other recommendations will be there too, including, I'm hoping, well, not necessarily a recommendation from the Democracy Review, I don't think they're going that far, but there is several motions on will be submitted, whether they make it onto the order paper, I hope they will, onto the agenda, but a number of motions have been submitted in relation to the way in which we select our MPs, and that's the focus of my Democracy Roadshow, which has been going around the country, as you pointed out at the beginning of this item now, George. So I think that, there's no coincidence that this timing is, ahead of this conference. It's an attempt to obviously derail the attempts at democratising the party, but this is not going to be sabotaged. I mean, there is such an appetite, I think, now for the democratisation of the party, for a socialist programme that, irrespective of what they do, I don't believe, will succeed. And Jeremy's very resilient, and he will stick in there.
Now, my Twitter feed is filled with people saying that you'd be a better deputy leader than the one you've currently got. It's very difficult, I would have thought, after Tom Watson's, root and branch attack, to put it kindly, on Jeremy Corbyn in the pro-war Observer on Sunday morning, for him to continue to sit as the deputy leader, at least credibly. What's going to happen with that? I mean, nobody can tolerate a deputy leader who's trying to unseat them.
Well, the difficulty we have with the Constitution as it's currently formulated is that in order to mount a challenge to Tom or whoever is the incumbent requires a large number of MPs. I think it'd be 50-odd MPs, if I'm not mistaken, to mount a challenge to sign the ballot paper, to nominate you effectively to mount that challenge. And clearly, I don't think of the way in which the PLP, Parliamentary Labour Party, is currently constituted. There are sufficient MPs who would be willing to sign the nomination papers for a challenger to stand against Tom. I don't think so, but I could be wrong. But obviously, a lot of members again, and the grassroots members have been very disappointed, I think, with Tom's the way he's conducted himself as the deputy since he was elected, and promised to serve faithfully whoever was elected as the leader. And I think, he's not really fulfilled what I think a lot of people hoped he would do when he was elected to that position, and that's led to a lot of disappointment. And I think the final straw, really, for a lot of people was the attack that Tom penned in the Observer at the weekend. And there's a rumour going around from various sources, apparently reliable, that the only reason that Tom put that in the paper was because he wasn't able to get the slot he wanted at conference. At least that's what is being suggested now. One would hope that wasn't his motivation. But
I'm waiting for him to.
It's pretty shallow.
Very shallow. I'm waiting for him to call in, so I'll put that to him if and when he does. The situation, the Labour Party, as you describe it, sounds like a wonderful thing, but in reality, there's at least dual power in the Labour Party now, isn't there? Jeremy Corbyn has the overwhelming support of the party's membership, but his enemies have overwhelming support in Parliament, and their allies on the National Executive are very close to 50-50 with Corbyn, and some of Corbyn's supporters are distinctly wobbly. Witness the Pete Wilsman affair, where Momentum, for example, allies of yours normally, they dropped Wilsman on a really rather flimsy interpretation of a 55-second audio clip that someone had illicitly recorded from the telephone at a recent National Executive meeting. Given the withdrawal of support from Wilsman, it's not at all clear, is it, that the next National Executive will be any more supportive, reliably supportive of Corbyn than the current one is?
Well, I mean, I think the important thing is that we get the full so-called JC9 candidates, including Pete Wilsman, elected, because they would be the candidates on the NEC, if they get on, that would make sure they vote through the democracy review reforms and ensure that they find their way to the conference to be determined there and then fully, implemented beyond that. So I think that's really key. And yes, I mean, it's true that Momentum's leadership suggested that they wanted to, drop support for Pete, to end their endorsements of him, but that wasn't reflected, I don't think, by grassroots Momentum members who overwhelmingly still feel that it's important to back the full JC9 slate. And there was a huge outpouring, I think, of support for the full 9 candidates on social media. And there was some opposition, that's true, and some support for the position taken by the Momentum leadership. But that was a decision taken, as I understand it, by a handful of senior Momentum members, and I don't think it was even the full National Coordinating Committee that took that decision. So, yeah, I mean, I think, again, it's one of these issues about, who is the party? What is the party? Is the party, or is Momentum, the people at the top, or is it the whole of the organisation, the grassroots? And my opinion is it's the grassroots. That's what makes the party. That's what sustains the party. That's what will enable us to carry our message to a wider audience. That's how we've been able to grow the party through word of mouth, through the organic way in which the messages on social media have spread far and wide, and how Momentum was so successful in the last general election. I mean, obviously they were fantastically creative and put some brilliant campaign material onto social media, which was able to reach, to 10 to 15 million people on occasions. But that was as a consequence of the activists organically sharing the material that, Momentum was producing. That's why I think we will always defeat the right wing, the forces of conservatism, because whilst they can pay for advertisements, while they can even pay for material to be put onto social media, they haven't got that mass movement behind them that are desperate, are crying out for the sort of agenda that Jeremy has put forward. And, as I think I probably said before on your programme, George, the fact is that it's not just Labour members and supporters. The vast majority of the British public overwhelmingly support the programme that Labour is now putting forward. And as I go around the country, I say to Labour activists, there's never been an easier time to campaign for the Labour Party, because between 70 and 80% of the public agree with our policy programme. Individually, each individual policy initiative that was in our last manifesto is overwhelmingly supported by the public. So it's really a question of transferring that support for the programme to votes in the ballot box. And that's why I think that we've got a great opportunity now, why our mass movements are our secret weapon, and why we need to make sure that we do continue to stand together. Solidarity has never been more important. The establishment will continue to throw as much dirt as they possibly can, where they can use lackeys or the ill-informed who ought to be on our side but help to carry the message of the kind of neoliberal establishment. Then they will actually use that. And, we must not be demoralised or upset by things like what's happened with the decision not to, for whatever reason, proceed with the disciplinary action against Margaret Hodge. We have to remember what the prize is. And like the civil rights campaigners, and there was that great civil rights protest song, "Keep Your Eyes on the Prize." That's what we have to do, keep our eyes on the prize. And the prize is really changing the course of history. And that's why there is such a powerful range of opponents lined up against to try and defeat us.
Last question.
Strong and true, we will prevail. We'll beat them, George.
Last question, Chris. I spoke to someone today who should know, who thinks that the long-heralded breakaway from the Labour Party, at least in Parliament, is definitely on. That person had a smaller number of breakaway Labour MPs in mind than I have. Is it your view that the only logical end result of all this turmoil that has been unleashed is that some Labour members of Parliament are for the off?
Well, that's certainly been a strong rumour that's been going around for some time now, as you say, and there's a number of MPs who are prime candidates, I think, to potentially, create a new party. And I think that, if that's what they want to do, that wouldn't be a bad thing. That would be a thoroughly good thing, I think, in my opinion, because it would free the Labour Party from some of the turmoil which is being created by certain individuals, and it would, I think, enable us really to focus on our policy programme. I mean, there's been so much energy taken dealing with these internal wrangles when we ought to be focused on promoting our very positive message, I think, to the country. And these summer months, I was hoping, and I am sort of doing that, although it's not really finding its way onto the airways, as we know, putting forward our very progressive agenda. And so I think if it does happen, that's fine. It gives people more of a choice. I understand that Vince Cable is quite keen to be yet another iteration of the Liberals. We had the Liberal SDP alliance, which morphed into the Liberal Democrats. It looks like there's potentially another iteration. And one would have thought that the whole raison d'etre of the Liberal Democrats now is to try and halt Brexit. And yet, as I understand it, Vince Cable and Tim Farron were away at a meeting discussing this new party on the day when there was a vote on the customs union, which was only very narrowly defeated. You kind of couldn't quite make it up, really, could you? But so, yeah, I think they potentially would be part of it. And, we've been here before with the SDP, but I think it's very different. I think this time, with the mass movement that Labour has now behind us, with the advent of social media, I don't think that they would have the same impact that the SDP did in 1981 when they were founded, and then helped Thatcher to a landslide victory in 83 with a smaller share of the vote that she got in 1979, and actually repeated that in 1987 as well. So I think we're in a good place, and if they do decide to go, then I think that will strengthen us, and we can get as it were, cracked on with putting out our message and winning people over to the common sense socialist agenda, which won't take a lot of doing because, as I've already said, George, the vast majority of people support our individual programme. And I think whilst we are focused on this sort of navel-gazing internal wrangles, it does make it difficult to get that message out there. And, the old adage that, people don't vote for a divided party rings true as well. So, if people feel they can't live within the Labour Party now, then well, good luck to them, let them go, and we will carry on, and people will make their choice when the election eventually comes.
Chris Williamson, MP, thanks very much for joining us. It is the mother of all talk